Sure. I don't know. I mean,
We're now, well, we're
oh,
streaming live on YouTube, so I guess we can get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first in the School of Art Gallery's virtual talk series, featuring Plug In ICA's new executive director, Allison Yearwood. My name is Blair Fornwald, and I'm director curator of the School of Art Gallery. Wherever you are joining us from, I would invite you to think about the land that you're on, your relationship to it, and to its original caretakers. What are the concrete actions that you and your organizations or institutions that you are part of are taking or could take to build strong and authentic and ethical relationships with Indigenous communities? I'm speaking on behalf of the School of Art Gallery, the School of Art, and the University of Manitoba, located on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of both past and present, and we dedicate ourselves to doing better, to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities and in the spirit of conciliation and collaboration. This virtual talk series is a gallery programming initiative that invites BIPOC artists, curators, writers, and arts professionals to present talks and lectures on their work, providing critical insights, perspectives, and opportunities for conversation. Allison is our first speaker. We both moved here around the same time or within months of each other to take our respective positions in 2020. I for the first time and she returning to her hometown. And we both moved here during a time when it's been really, I think, quite challenging to be out and about, to meet people and to make connections. Nonetheless, we've had several really insightful, generous, and I think truly delightful conversations over the past several months. And that really motivated my desire to invite Allison to present here tonight. I'm interested in the breadth and depth of her experience working with Indigenous arts communities, in her institutional critique, in her curatorial philosophy, and in the circuitous and intriguing career path that has brought her to Plug In ICA today. I'm eager to know more about this career trajectory, and I'm sure that you also are. Before we get started, though, a little bit of housekeeping. The School of Art Gallery and programs such as this are supported by the University of Manitoba, the School of Arts faculty and staff, national and provincial funding agencies, donors, and volunteers. In particular, I would like to acknowledge the fantastic team at the School of Art Gallery, who include Jane Borbridge, our education coordinator, who's assisting with tonight's talk, as well as Donna Jones, administrative assistant, C.W. Brooks, our registrar and preparator, and Christina Hajar, our Young Canada Works curatorial assistant. I also wish to thank the School of Art students who are working with us at the gallery, Casper Stein, who is our gallery monitor, and Ciel Cottle, who is our digital assistant. Ciel's insights, technical expertise, and enthusiasm for digital programming have been really instrumental in putting this and the rest of the gallery's digital offerings into place. I would be remiss our team at the School of Art, especially Kaylin Harrison, our media and events support coordinator, who's on tech support tonight, as well as Frank Fernandez, our land coordinator, and Trevor Baziak, our digital technician, who have both been extremely helpful in digitizing our programming and getting this particular program up and running. I would also like to take this time to remind you that Jane Borbridge is one of the artists in One Queer City, a bus shelter ad exhibition that's up in various bus shelters in downtown Winnipeg until February 14th. And she has a performance this Saturday at 5 p.m. It's going to be taking place in an undisclosed location and streaming live on Instagram Live. It's not long and it's going to be pretty interesting. So do set your clocks and don't miss it. I would also like to encourage you to check out the Swanna Film Festival, curated by Christina Hajar. It features short films and poetry readings by Southwest Asian and North African creators, streaming for free on the gallery's YouTube channel from February 5th to 18th. There are also 2 free workshops open to Swanna participants. Registration is required and space is now extremely limited. Those spots are almost filled up. So if this is you and you're interested, I would encourage you to register ASAP or be on the wait list. There's also a lot of other great programming coming up at the gallery too, so I'd encourage you to visit the School of Art Gallery's website, Facebook, or Instagram, and check out our upcoming events that are happening both on and offline. I would also like to note that we're going to be recording this video and uploading it to the School of Art Gallery's YouTube channel for posterity and future viewing. I would also like to ask that everyone make sure that their audio is muted. I think everybody is. The microphone icon on the far left of you should be red. If it's green, please click it on to mute. It's the new silence your cell phones. We also have Asl interpreters available for this talk. Their names are Christina and Shayna, and they're going to be switching back and forth. If you use ASL interpretation, you can pin their screens. Their names are, or their screen names are ASL interpreter and echo interpreter. And you can do that so that they're always visible by you or to you by clicking on their screens or names in the participant menu and choosing the pin video option. If you are having trouble seeing the interpreters, please message us in the chat window and we will help you out. And if you're having any technical issues, please message us in the chat window. You can message SOA Gallery Tech Support in particular, and Kaylin will help you. If you have any questions during the talk, please raise your emoji hand and we'll try to find you and facilitate conversation. You can also use the chat function to ask your questions or, unmute your audio and ask it with your voice. We're also going to be collecting questions over on YouTube Live, where we are streaming and delivering them over to the Zoom. And finally, the reason that we are all here, I'd like to join you in welcoming Allison Yearwood, Plug In ICA Executive Director, UFW alumnus, and prodigal Winnipeg daughter to our digital stage.
Okay, wow. Okay, thank you. Oh, is there a question? Or is that clapping?
It's claps.
Oh, sorry. See, generational migrate, like that was just like, okay. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I do need to, though, acknowledge that because so much of the work that I do is so much intertwined with my identity as being a stolen person on stolen land, I need to do my own land acknowledgement just for my edification and how I do my own work. So I need to share and thank Brianna Wentz from Ace Art for providing me with this text, because it's really resonating with me energetically at the moment right now. And I just feel like I want to present this as my land acknowledgement of where I am. So provide me with that space to provide this land acknowledgement that really resonates right now where I'm sitting. I would like to acknowledge the hypocrisy of land acknowledgement, as they are often empty statements that are not followed by action that makes a tangible difference in the fight for the recognition of Indigenous rights and sovereignty from colonial governments. When they are given so routinely, they become customary lip service. Not only asking someone, "How are you?" as a part of a greeting, even when we're not actually interested in hearing about how someone is doing, this devalues the ensuing interaction, as we have not only demonstrated a lack of investment in the other person's quality of life, but have also demonstrated a greater commitment to niceties and maintaining a surface level congeniality. This is not what a land acknowledgement should be. It should not be a performative act. However, as the dominant culture in this country would have us believe that this is a diverse, just, and free society, most settlers can go their whole lives without ever having to acknowledge the ongoing genocide that takes place on this land every day. So that is the light that I will now say. We are on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, OG Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We thank and honor the traditional keepers of this land. We will now take a minute of silence to reflect on the roles that we've played in maintaining the status quo, and that we would have us forget and silence the traditional keepers of this land, as well as the imperative role of the artist in presenting ideas that challenge the status quo, and what our roles as community leaders in supporting and strengthening those artists. I will just ask that you already done that, and we just take a minute just to reflect. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, so hello, my name is Allison Yearwood. I am a child-free auntie. I have no fur babies either. I am now back home, proudly back home on Treaty 1. I'm really happy and thrilled to be asked to do this, because I feel like I got to come into my role, and COVID hit, and I'm here, I'm doing the work, I'm at Plug In, I'm getting things done, but I feel like folks don't know who I am. Some folks do, because as Blair mentioned, I'm actually from Winnipeg. So I feel like I've had many lives, like a little bit like a cat. I've come in and out of Winnipeg a few times. So I also don't come from the formal viewpoint of how most people come into this world and come into the art world. Like, I don't have the Encyclopedia Britannica or alphabet behind my name, and I don't come through academia. Even though I am a UW alum, I don't come from the kind of traditional staying in school, staying in study. I come more from a practical sense. And as I mentioned earlier, I come from the ideology of a stolen person on stolen land. Do we have some questions? Oh, thank you. Yes, can you see me now? Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay. Yeah, so my first kind of, where we start my kind of journey is that I have a degree in fashion design that I got in the UK. I didn't use it at all. My mother was like, okay, you're going to come back home. I came back to the UW, got a business admin poli-sci degree. And then I was like, what do I do now? And I was a MAC makeup artist for many years. And I did makeup for film and stage and TV and lots of fun things. And it really a really fun time in my life. Here's a great picture of me sitting on set. And as anyone who's sit on a TV or film production set, you're sitting there for hours having to be silent and sometimes and doing nothing. So that's another makeup artist, Tracy Taggart, on a set with me. And here we go, here we begin. So I started my career out at Urban Shaman. I was really fortunate enough to have Steve Loff, Jamie Isaac, Stuart Desmonte kind of say, hey, if we want folks to kind of champion our story and talk about us and speak about us in the way that we want to be spoken about and have our stories shared in the way that we want them shared, we need to have other people at the table who know how our stories are told and know how to see our work and know how to respect our work and know how to advocate for our work. And Casey Adams was leaving her role as program coordinator, and I love Casey. And I was so fortunate to get her role at Urban, because I then became the first ever non-Indigenous member of staff there at Urban. And as you can see, they painted the wall, and it's still red. Even though I love going to visit Urban, because that space constantly evolves and grows and changes. And I think it's just such a physical representation of Indigenous creation, because it shapes and shifts to support their artists. And I love that. And I love the fact that my career starts there, and I'm learning, and so many curators and artists and elders came into this space and shared and gave me so many stories, and were able to educate me in a way that I feel like I can authentically respect and authentically advocate for Indigenous people and folks who live on Turtle Island in Australia and in Antarera. This is Megan Tamati Cornell from I got to meet her when I was at Urban, but a beautiful story is when I walked in on my first day at a Plug In, I got to see the book that she and Dr. Julie Nagum, another friend, were working on. And it's so nice to see how stories and people and projects come together, and eventually they produce such beautiful work. And I'm really honored and happy that I get to represent some of this cool work yet again. Here's me at Urban, in one of the different physical iterations of Urban, because now that is a hole. There's a hole right in where that wall is. And the Marvin Francis Digital Gallery is now where that door kind of shoots and jets off in. And I think you can see just beyond my shoulder, the old icon and the old image of Urban Shaman Gallery Contemporary Aboriginal Art, which is their official name. This is a lovely story because this is Jenny Western. She became the ED right after Steve Loft at Urban. And I got to work with her on Mother's Mother's Mother. And when I moved to Australia and I was moving a bookshelf after my roommate had moved out, and after that moment, I never again financially had to have another roommate until now with my mother, but that's a whole different story. But anyways, it was so poignant to now be able to like have the financial ability to not need a roommate. And then when I was moving the bookshelf, this publication just popped out, and I took a picture, and it was just Jenny Western's Mother's Mother's Mother. And I just felt like, ooh, this is like the universe just telling me like, you're on the right track, you're doing the right thing. And that felt really, really good. Also too, in my tenure at Urban, I was on the Winnipeg Film Group board. I've been on their board twice. There you can see me at the 25th anniversary for Cinematheque with Dave Barber. And I'm wearing, I believe I am wearing the first iteration of the Dave Barber t-shirt. I believe now there have been many iterations of the Dave Barber t-shirt. I'm always on a board of some sort. Right now, I sit on ACE's board and I sit on Spiderweb Show's board. So something that Steve always taught me was you always want to be able to sit in the, oh, is there a question? No? Okay. The one thing that Steve Loft always taught me was be on a board. You need to be contributing to your community and contributing to things you believe in. And also never buy ad space in a publication that won't give you editorial. This is me when I moved to Banff and I became the digital producer for Women in the Director's Chair. And I just wanted to note some of the names because that's Sharon Lewis and Karen Lamb sitting behind me in the iteration that I got to do. The Women in the Director's Chair was an access program at the Banff Centre to help women become directors. There's a real issue about women in film creation and generation. And there's a real issue about women and people of different racialized experience being on film crews. So essentially my job was coordinating 7 directors and their film crews and their mentors and their proteges so they can create these 7 recorded screens that they work, not screens, scenes that they work on. And the graduating class that I was in was Karen Lamb, Naomi Jane, Mary Bissell, Paula Kelly, a Winnipegger, Dominique Keller, Sharon Lewis, Paula Jones, and Kari Skoglund was the mentor. But Mary Bissell was actually the EP for Surviving R. Kelly. And I was so like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I remember I remember when I was working at the Banff Centre and I was working with her, and now she's creating amazing documentary reel pieces. Here's me being a fool in one of the residencies at the digital, now defunct Banff Institute for Digital Creation, no longer exists. Here's me in my Toronto years. I became the GM for the Collective of Black Artists. It will become the first time I encounter lateral violence. It's the first time in my career I get told I'm not Black enough. It's the first time I get told that because I grew up in Winnipeg as opposed to Toronto, that experience is inauthentic, and that the real Black people live in Toronto and the real struggle is held in Toronto. So as you can imagine, that became a really like impossible environment to work in. And I remember being really miserable living in Toronto and not enjoying it. And for many years, just having a bad relationship with Toronto and how Toronto moves and things that come out of Toronto, like really bad mojo. And I just remember thinking to myself, okay, so what do I want to do? Like, what do I want to say? Like, where do I want to go? And I just remember going, okay, I don't want to move somewhere where I can't speak the language and I can't get a job where I can feel like I'm doing something. So it became down to like English speaking countries. And so I said, I lived in the UK, done that. I'm not sure about Ireland, not sure about that, no. And so Australia and New Zealand both came up, and I started applying. And I luckily, sorry about that, folks, got the job as the art and business manager for Yamaji Art. And it is nestled right on the coast of, the western coast of Australia. It's 4 hours north of Perth. Perth is known as the most isolated city in the world, so that should give you an indication of kind of where I end up in. I spent 4 years in Australia. This is going to be like the job that kind of puts me on my map, defines a lot of my like how I see things now, how I work. A lot of my connections in my career come from this time in my life. It's a special time in my life too. And so this picture I'm showing right now is from Art Collector magazine. And so, as you can tell, we were able, in the time that I was there, to, as you can see, I don't know if the caption is blurry or not, but it says, within 5 short years, Yamaji Art has mounted exhibitions across the state in Canberra and internationally in Brussels, Cape Town, Washington, and The Hague. Those are all locations that I was taking this show to. When I arrived in Australia, I came into like what was a little room, and I met this beautiful community, the Wadjuri people, who were like, we saw your resume working at Urban Shaman, and they were like, we want what you did to do there to do here. And I was just like, well, what did you think I did? Like, it wasn't me. I was just like there. But I was like, okay, you're entrusting me. You need support. You have like great skills. You have amazing talent. So let's do this thing. Let's lean into it. So off the hop, one of the biggest, and I should probably keep the slide there. So this piece here is the Seven Sisters, and it is so the exhibition that this all comes from is called Ilgaridgery, and that's a Wadjuri word meaning things belonging to the sky. And to the Wadjuri people and to many other Indigenous people, their creation story and a lot of other stories are told from the perspective of looking up into the sky and looking at the stars. Hence. And so it was so interesting being from the Turtle Island perspective, where the sky is quite different because we're in a different hemisphere, and then coming and seeing these other stories and these other narratives. And one of the biggest projects that got defined and really propelled the exhibition Ilgaridgery was a collaboration with the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, because they wanted to create the biggest telescope in the quietest place, which was right next door to us, and also in South Africa. So we got down to South Africa and a little strip between Australia and New Zealand. And so through that work, we created a book, so Window to the Universe, which is telling the stories from the scientific perspective, but also using Indigenous imagery to also tell the same stories. From that, we got a public art piece. So these are the Emu Eggs. And if you know anything about a lot of the creation stories that come from that portion of the world, the emu in the sky is a creation story. So these are the emu eggs, and the designs are Aboriginal dot painting of, I'll go back, one of this piece. So they picked out that, and this company worked with Margaret and Barbara, and they created, not only did they create these emu eggs, but they also got to be featured in Vogue magazine, because they created these, we copyrighted the print onto scarves, and it ended up in Vogue magazine. Oh, they were just thrilled as beans. And it was so fun. And it was one of those points in my life that I really enjoyed, because it was so lovely to work with women of like an older age who were having like, this is like their fourth, fifth lifetime. And now they were like world acclaimed artists, and we were going around the world. And I will never forget taking, and you can see her, she's wearing the red skirt and the peach top, and we were going off to The Hague. This is the installation area for these amazing pieces. So you can see the amount of respect that we ended up getting for those pieces. But anyways, we go to these countries, and they're traditional women. They don't have their passports. They don't have these documentations and registrations. They've been living on the land nomadically. So they don't need to be doing all these check-ins with the state and all that nonsense. That's over their business. And so there was so much administration to kind of get them over there and get passports and get birth certificates for a senior. Birth certificate for a senior citizen. Let me tell you, that's a new one. That one was like, wow, but amazing and possible. So hey, anything's possible if you really want to do it. But it was really special, because I remember them making me go outside when we went to Brussels and to take a picture of the snow. Like, they wanted a picture of me outside in the snow. Like, they didn't want to go out in the snow. They wanted a picture of me outside in the snow. And, but it was really special to be able to go and travel and to show them like how their work influences and how much people want to hear their stories from them. They don't want to hear me or other people. And that was one of the things that was really glaring to me when I was doing my work out there, was just, I look like an Aboriginal Australian, but I don't culturally self-identify, and I'm not. And one of the learnings I had in my first month there was the precision of the racism, because I looked like them. So when folks would walk into the room, immediately they would be like, like, where's the real person who runs this? Because actually, ironically, even though there are Aboriginal art centers all across Australia, they're hardly ever run by people of Aboriginal Australian descent. They're usually European people, white Wajulas. The Wiradjuri word for white person is Wajula. So usually Wajula would be maintaining that space. So even when I was in Australia, I was like a first of a first, even though I was maintaining an Aboriginal art center, which was mind-blowing on so many levels for me. Anyways, I recall just being able to do and move in a way that my first week, I had elders and community just waiting for me and sitting, and they wanted to sit in the art center. And I remember whispering to like my chair of the board and going like, why is everyone just waiting for me and sitting around? And they're like, oh, they just love it when the white tourists come in and like freak out when they see you. And then when they hear your accent, go, oh, she's fine. Yeah. Okay. And it was just like, oh my God, it's nice to know I'm like performance art in town. But it was kind of like a little like jarring. And for me, I'd never experienced something quite so much and kind of heavy, and it weighed on me, and it was like, ooh, we've got to approach this work in a little bit of a different way. And I was really fortunate. I have some good friends from my Urban Shaman days, and that's Scott Benacine Abandon. He was doing a residency in Melbourne, and he actually called me when he was in Australia, and he said, Allison, I love it. It's great. I have lots of space. I can do lots of work, but where are the Indigenous people? Like, where are the people like me? And I said, oh no, they live out here, out in the outback with me. Like, do you want to come across? Like, I'll invite you. And he came out to visit me out in Geraldton and spend some time with the artists, and that it was a great artist exchange and just a great community and peer-to-peer exchange. And you can see he is visiting their language center in Mullewa. And he was like a celebrity. Like they just thought he was the bee's knees. And this is a great night, because here's a night where Scott is teaching them how to make Indian tacos, and they've got routail for him. So it was kind of a Indigenous Aboriginal cultural exchange. And a really special moment was one of the elders kind of, went and pointed with his lips to Scott and brought him aside and said, hey, that Allison over there, whatever you did well, because you trained her to be very good to us, and she does a good job for us. And it was just nice to have an Indigenous elder from another part and another community come to a friend of mine who's part and invested and helped me learn and grow and is from that identity, and to have that kind of like legitimization almost of like, yeah, the education that she's getting is good, it's sound, it's safe, it's doing good work, we feel comfortable. And that really just meant a lot to me, and doing that, having that evening. And this is a really special memory. I know Scott and Roland Soulier, another artist who has a piece out on Main Street right in front of the APTN building. I know that we've made many connections and done many works now because of the time that we got to have together there. Something I'm really proud of at my time at Yamaji Art was that I knew when it was time to move out of the way. So even though I was in that space and I was training, actually I had one of the younger girls in the community who people kind of just gave up on, just thought, hey, she's had some addiction issues. Well, she showed up every day. Like, she literally showed up every day to the center. And I started saying, okay, well, you're going to do something. So she started to work with me, and I started to, train her on how to like install work. And we learned how do you put a show together? Like, how do you take the stories that we're told? And sometimes we can't share in a way for other people, but how can we share these stories in a way that's authentic to you and your identity, instead of us boxing up these paintings and having other curators just and that's how it went. Like you just would give off the work and they would just put it up and give no input to the artist, ask no questions. It was just, thank you, here's your commission, bye-bye. But no, with Lakeisha, there was an opportunity to actually, stop and ask questions and do the work with her and show her how I was doing the work and have her works alongside me. We went all along the Australian Western countryside together, collecting work and distributing art materials to artists so that they could create. We went into like the prisons and jails and got works there because so many of the men are incarcerated, and because of the way that stories are distributed, there are men's stories, there are women's stories, and there are kids' stories. The women hold the women and the kids' stories and the men hold the men's stories. If the men are incarcerated away, the men's stories go away. They don't get to be shared. They don't get to be, you know, celebrated and communicated. And so one way you can actually have, like we were getting those stories were to give them camp, because you're allowed to go into a prison and give art, like art supplies. And so that's what we did. And one of the ways to provide economic sovereignty also to incarcerated folks was to also hold their checks once they sold their work. So I held a lot of people's checks once they got out of prison and was like, oh, here you go. Now please get an apartment and come back in 2 weeks and get more supplies, because there are people who will totally, engage in your work and want to know more about your work. And I want to help you. And, we can get workshops. Like I can bring more friends from Canada and we can do more peer mentorship. We can do more learning how to use digital tools. And that's something I really enjoyed doing with this group, was bringing workshops and bring all of these friends I had to bear with all of their skills and all of their knowledge and have this peer-to-peer learning. Like Scott brought in like filmmaking and photography, like we brought in textile work, like we just never stopped sharing stories of like the culture through like actualization of creating work. It was really just such a special time and it was really so beautiful. And I really did learn a lot. Like here's an example of me going on into country and out bush sort of and working with traditional flint knappers and traditional musicians. And what they're doing is making tapping sticks. And that's the finished product. And one of the things that I did a lot of and worked with this group was creating ability to have economic sovereignty, because the examples of closed communities in Australia is very similar to reserves in Canada. And a lot of the conditions are not great. And a lot of these communities need special services. They need heightened services, and they don't have the funds or the resources to get them. And in a lot of smaller remote communities, the art center is the only way for some economic sovereignty, because the people can come in, get supplies, and produce work that we sell, and then we give them back the commission. And also too, Australia was better than Canada, please, on the resale royalty for artists to get, so that when art gets sold again and again and again, the artist gets paid again and again and again and again. And if anyone's doing that work in Manitoba and wants to get that moving, like, please let me know, because like I did work with people who brought that to bear in Australia. So like, let's just lift the notes and do it here, because it's not as challenging. Well, it is to bring the infrastructure in, but we can do it. Anyways, I digress. I will say trigger warning on the next slide. So something I learned about when I lived in Australia was like the precise racism that is there. And so this is going to like literally the grocery store, and they have these toys called the gollywogs, and we would ask, like, I remember working with Charmaine and going, can you please take these down? They're like offensive. They're like, please do your history on this one. Like, take them down. And no, and they're so prevalent that these dolls are sold for like $2.99 next to like no named foods. It like, Australia was a mind trip for like how racist they were and how precise they were with their racism and their exploitation. Here's a great example of using artist copyright. This is on the largest supercomputer. It's an Indigenous artwork that the artist sold the piece, and then the artist got to sell the copyright for the piece. So something that we also worked on was teaching artists how to advocate for their pieces and know how to manage a portfolio. So they knew how to copyright, they knew how to use e-commerce, they knew how to keep things working for them, because they just needed to have way more economic freedom than they were getting. And the nature usually was someone would buy their art piece, then slap it on something, and that would be the end of it. But I think one of the reasons why the Australian government was really happy to see the back of me at the end of my tenure when I was in Australia was because they stopped having someone like me going, oh, you can't just use an artist's artwork and not pay for either purchasing the piece, either using it in copyright. So yeah, how are we going to get that done? Because I was a real stickler for people borrowing Aboriginal artworks and then putting them on other things. And yeah, that's not really my bag. Here's another example of copyright onto a book. And here's the painting, and then here's the book. So this is the first, you can't really see the bigger picture, but this is the original space that we were in. And we eventually got to move into our own gallery space because we started really just being able to not rely so much on our funds and our grants, and we got to be able to kind of define how we were working. And before I forget, I did mention Emu in the Sky and the Seven Sisters. Well, that is the painting of the emu in the sky and the Seven Sisters. And I will be very honest with you, when I first saw this painting, I thought, oh, it's beautiful and it's gorgeous, but that's not representational of the sky. That's just, it's not. And then two elders took me out to a very dark sky. I was a little nervous at first, but I remember they just went, look up. And I'm not going to even lie to you. It was that emu with the star sack in the bottom. And I will never doubt what an Indigenous person says to me after that moment, because that painting is actually a highly pictorial representation of actually the sky. It's quite special and quite unique. Here is me speaking and presenting that public art piece that we were talking about. It was really lovely to make connections with the town of Geraldton and the Wadjuri and Mara people, and to kind of have the community start to acknowledge the work and the contribution that their Indigenous and Aboriginal community was providing them. And it was really special to kind of be out there and kind of, you know, celebrate an art piece and celebrate the community and celebrate with the artists, something like coming out and being in their community. A lot of times, the folks who came from off the land or out bush would feel really worried about coming into the city and coming into the town and wouldn't feel safe. And so having all of us having a moment of celebration and celebrating an Aboriginal art piece that is a creation story was just a beautiful moment, not only for the community, the Aboriginal community, but the community at large, because it was also acknowledging that they need to do better work and know these stories. These stories are on their land. These are their land of the story. This is their land stories. They need to acknowledge them. So after my time in Australia, I come back to Winnipeg. I will say that I had to be humbled coming back to Winnipeg because I thought, you know, I've done some stuff. I've been some places. I've created good work. I've made good networks. I should be able to come back to Winnipeg and people should be like, hey, can we work with you? Yeah, no one was feeling that. So I spent about 3 years being underemployed in Winnipeg. And that humbled me a lot. And it made me take a lot of stock in what I wanted and where I wanted to be in my career. And really, if I was going to stay in the arts, I think a lot of us who do work in the arts and have long careers in the arts do have these pivotal moments of like, can I sustain this? Can I stay here? Can I maintain this lifestyle? Do I want to maintain this lifestyle? Is this fulfilling to me anymore? And the answer, fortunately, was yes for me. And I'm really fortunate that Cecilia Orneda gave me an opportunity to do some event and project coordination while I was underemployed. And she put on the Mujer Artistes and curated the show at Ace Art. And I was just really fortunate that she took pity on me, kept me going, and a little bit kept that kind of fire still going so that I could keep kind of wanting to do this work. And fortunately enough, I end up in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, at the Northern Life Museum and Cultural Center, which was a real departure because now I'm going into museology, and that was something I had never done, and working more with artifacts and working more with museum type of pieces and archival type of pieces versus contemporary art, and then living on Treaty 5. So this was a whole different community for me to learn and have stories and to share stories from. It's a short period in my life. I only stay up north for 6 months because I then get recruited to come back to the Banff Centre and work as the program manager. Well, no, I come back to cover the maternity leave of Jean McPherson as the digital program manager. I then become fast friends with the lady who is on the far left, Renalta Arluc, and she is the director of Indigenous Arts at the Banff Centre. And we just became friends. She learned my story. She saw my work ethic, and she kind of just said, hey, do you want to be my program manager? Because I need to get this full-time department now that represents all of the disciplines at the Banff Centre. And I have to have a full cohort of and a full robust curriculum of residencies that go year round, because before Renalta came, the Indigenous art program was only part-time. It was only half a year. So this was a commitment for the 99 calls of action to make this a year-round program. And this was our first year. So there's Renalta, Janet Rogers, and Veronica Johnny. And these are some powerhouse women, let me tell you, who were the faculty for the first ever Indigenous storyteller residency, and that was a really significant and special residency. And my time at the Banff Centre was a real learning time, because it's the first time I kind of come into like a middle management and an influential role. I'm also the only Black person in management at the Banff Centre, PS, in this time too. But it's marred by a lot of people wanting me to be the Black person, to tell them that, like, okay, this is what you should do. But when I tell them what they shouldn't do and what's best to do and how to be safe, oh, please shut up. So this picture here shows you the back of our business cards. We didn't want the Banff Centre business cards. We wanted the business cards to represent the fact that the Indigenous suite was different than the Banff Centre suite, and that it came from a different space and voice, and that it represented different things. So the business cards, we actually had to fight to get these marketed, but thanks to Rosemary Thompson, she kind of went, no, this is the right thing to do, let's do it. And we ended up getting beautiful cards. I love this image because we, that teepee, which I helped erect with the Dene Naho facilitators, is when we did a residency for urban moose hide tanning. Yes, we were tanning hides in a national park in a teepee at the Banff Centre. And I just love that this is the actual residency that marks the opening of the Banff Centre and the programming launch. And it was just so special because it was like a reclamation of traditional activity in a space where Indigenous people were kicked out of very, very historically and very famously. And then kind of coming back with the agency and creation of an artistic viewpoint, and then having people from all of these different spaces on Turtle Island and abroad come and share and learn and occupy space and do that work there and complicate the institution with having to understand how to best support that work. I think one of the great things about doing that work at the Banff Centre was by just resisting and being there and forcing the institution to change, even though it was slow and it was exhausting at times, it comes, like, it really does come. It takes a minute. I know it takes a minute, but it does. Sometimes. This is the lovely Renalta and Megan Megasau. I just wanted this picture here because this is just so indicative of me. So the Banff PR team, who couldn't plan their way out of a paper bag, ended up needing like an artist to be in studio. And then they were like, oh, we want to talk about the Indigenous artists and the Indigenous arts. And I was like, okay, so who do you have? And they're like, oh, we don't have anyone. Do you know anyone? And I'm like, who am I supposed to pull out of my backside? And luckily, the visual arts department did have some artists in-house. And luckily, because I was like, oh, I know Megan, she's here. So I tear down, and as you can see, the film crew comes down and starts to tape away. And I just love that, because I think that just is indicative of me. I never kind of shy away or balk from like, oh, this isn't the right way to do it, or this isn't the right thing, or this is falling apart, or we don't have what we need. And it's like, just sometimes if you just stop and you trust and you just reach out to your networks, you get something. And Megan was so happy to have it, because then she had a beautiful spotlight that was professionally done. Banff Centre was so happy because they get to highlight an amazing artist. And I was just so happy because it's just lovely people doing good work. And I kind of love that I get to facilitate that. As I mentioned, I'm newly on the board of Spiderweb Show. They do performing art and are more in that genre. I think it's really important to kind of keep yourself malleable and adaptable, keep yourselves like really active and in all kinds of conversations, because you just never know what's going to spark. And then I'm now really honored and happy that I get to be back here, and I get to work with artists and curators and people here. And I really can't wait to kind of be able to start to have conversations and start to do some really fun work with people and yeah, do something and shake things up a little bit and not have it be the same old, same old. I'm really excited to be back here and to demonstrate that people who don't come from traditional pathways or traditional roles or places can get to places and be respected and do good work and represent different narratives and hold space. And I think there, I'll just thank everyone for listening to me, and I'll just say, are there any questions or anything? Or yeah. Oh, thank you, Blair. Oh, yes. I don't see a name, sorry. Can you unmute? Or I think there's a gentleman. Sorry.
Me?
Chuck Wadem?
Yeah, Chukudubem.
Oh, Chukudubem. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your talk.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for taking us through your journey of how you got here and what you've done in the past, and yeah, thanks a lot for that. I'm just very curious, and because you've talked about your past and how you've kind of learned and grown from various diverse backgrounds, and I'm curious on your plans to moving forward for Plug In Gallery, and that's because of Plug In Gallery has been an important institution in Winnipeg, given that it is an international is an institute of contemporary art. So it's been a space not just to display art, but also for lots of learning and research. And when it comes to contemporary art, there are lots of schools and ideologies and thoughts on the contemporary art. and what contemporary art is. So I just kind of have two questions, and you could just answer them in any brief way, but like one of them is like, what's your take on contemporary art? Like, what would you say is contemporary art? And also number two, what's your plan on continuing or pushing those boundaries? Like you said, like there could be lots of boundaries with academia. So what I would just really love to know what your plans are, like of breaking those boundaries and pushing these conversations of contemporary art forward.
Yeah, oh my gosh, thank you so much for that question. Am I on mute? You can hear me, right? Okay. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to maintain a space, so you asked me, what are my thoughts on contemporary art? Where I think right now contemporary art is really catching up to the fact that Indigenous and Black and BIPOC artists have been actually just been doing the contemporary work. They've been living in that space. They've been making the message. It's kind of funny because it's like the industry is turning around and realizing that they've been doing, it's like, oh my God, look at all this fresh work. And it's like, no, they've been doing it for 10 years. They've been doing it for 5 years. They've been doing it for a minute. Like, no, they just haven't had the spaces to present, or they haven't had the networks or the space to kind of hold conversation. So what I think right now is I get to like work with I think folks like, I've seen your name. So I think I get to work with folks like yourself and bring you into Plug In and have questions and hold dialogues and put different spaces of faculty and holding, what is a faculty member? Can an elder be a faculty member? Can an elder be a student? And like holding different conversations of how we unpack that educational model and bringing contemporary art into like schools and unpacking anti-racist and anti-oppression ideologies within contemporary art within school curriculum. Like we can get that deep and intersectional. We need to stop kind of being so like, if we can only solve one thing at one time and it only can be like this and it can't be that deep. It's like, no, we can hold, bring artists to the table to create curriculum for kids that are gonna teach them how to be like anti-racist in a safe way. Guaranteed you're gonna have some really innovative and beautiful ways to do that. And I'm really hoping that through partnership and conversation with folks, institutions, artists, different stakeholders, that like we can kind of start to push what those boundaries are, and we can start to push what those spaces are. Like, I'm not interested in having the same old productions of things again and again and again. Like, that to me is really not interesting. Like, I would rather have different voices, different spaces. I'd rather be complexified by an artist or a curator coming into the space and have the space then have to transform to be better representative to that artist or helpful to that artist, if that makes any sense. Feel free to jump back in if like you need me to like unpack anything I'm saying too.
I'm just learning. I'm just listening and learning. So
yeah, okay. So I always want to make sure I'm not being too presumptive, and that's it too. Like, that's my energy. Like, my energy is not that I want you to come into the gallery space and feel like I'm going to direct you into the vision of what high art is. No, I want you to come in and I want you to have fun and I want you to be uncomfortable and I want you to learn and I want you to do so many different things. Like, I want to do those things with you. Like, Plug In is part of the community. It's part of the fabric. So it has to live up to its responsibilities. And so part of my role too is listening and finding out, like, what do people want? Like, what do people want to see? Like, like, have we not been listening to you? Like, have we been ignoring you? Like, that's what we need to know. Like, we need to kind of stand and confront what people have been trying to tell us and we've been too resistant to hear, because some of us have been white and don't want to hear it. But now that like some of us who are not white and want to hear it are in these spaces of influence, like, we can kind of disrupt the white supremacist space, and I think that's really the ethos that I stand on. I started saying I'm a stolen person on stolen land. Like, that is who I am, and that's how I live. And I'm really eager to work with like Julie and Jamie and Kabusiak and across the street. And I'm waiting for COVID to be done so I hope you can feel the energy that radiates from me, like partnerships, relationships, getting out there is part of my shtick. So being in a cube is not part of my shtick. So yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge to do these things. So yeah, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think we have another one in the chat. Oh no, my video was off, sorry. Am I howling in the wind again?
Oh, hi, I can ask another question.
Okay. I hope that was at least somewhat valuable to folks. I feel like I was just talking at people, like, you know, so yeah.
I think it's hard like to be sort of like talking into the void that is like a Zoom talk, or like to sort of like give an answer and then like not have the sort of regular social cues that are like, oh yeah, great.
Yeah, I like social cues. I work a lot in the social aspect of life. So for me right now, being a cube is very challenging. I'm also, if anyone has maybe not picked up on it, I'm probably a frustrated stand-up comic. So yeah.
I guess I was wondering too, I think so much of your work, Sarah Sarazik says she's nodding and sending invisible social cues, like from her Zoom box. So
thank you for the mercy. Thank you for the mercy.
Yeah, I think so much of the work that you've done, maybe especially the work that you were doing in Australia, is really focused on creation. Maybe the work in Banff as well, like really focused on creation and sort of like different sort of pedagogical models, or also just like giving artists agency to self-identify and make their work like speak on their own behalf about their work. And I wonder how you square that with curatorial practice, which I think a lot of times, hopefully we're kind of unpicking those knots, but is kind of about ascribing meaning or like sort of creating a narrative out of artists' work.
I know, right? Because I don't come from your world of wanting to do that naturally. So it comes so unnaturally to me. But no, and I do not hate me, curators. I see the role, you're important. But yeah, I feel like I need to have a relationship with the curator to understand like how they kind of create those narratives and create like their safe space and create their working relationships. I think that's really important in how I, at least whenever I've worked with curators or selected curators, I'm actually working with Jenny Western in a curatorial way. So it's been really interesting to work with what I want to call a professional curator when I feel like I'm in the Olympics of curation. So like I'm more amateur, so yeah, I'm still waiting for my gold medal. But I feel like it's challenging because I always want the artist to kind of lead the conversation a little bit more. So yeah, for me, it's a challenge, but I'm learning, I'm growing.
Yeah, I guess, I just think a lot, I guess, as somebody who's like, a curator, but like someone who also kind of wants to move in the world like in an ethical kind of responsible way. Like I'm interested in the ethics of curating and I don't know.
I think it's a lot of being really close to the person you're working with to know when to pull away. Like I can recall a time when we were creating a residency in the Indigenous Arts Department, and it was Indigiqueer and trans and two-spirited, and that is not my identity. And we had created the residency, we created the space, we had created the abstract, we even created the title. Like that's how far we had gotten into like the art like into it. And then we what came to Lindsay Nixon and Dana Danger, and we were like, hey, do you want this residency? And they were like, well, we want a residency and we want the resources and we want the space, but we don't want cis-normative people telling us like how to like do our residency. And so it was actually having these same, like the cognizance of going, oh my God, like, oh, whoa, okay, oops. We're going to scrap the idea. You hold the space, you hold the resources, but we're just going to move out of the way. And we're just going to ask you to give us a glossary of terms, give us the knowledge of when to be safe with you. Because remember, we are moving in a cis-normative world. So we're going to make dumb cis-normative expectations. So we had to ask, how can we do the extra labor so we don't put it on the people who are educating us? But then how do we do it in a way that they are authentically telling us what we need? And I will be very frank and very honest, that kind of work is done with tremendous check-ins, and so much more than I think even institutions feel confident doing. And even though it feels so weird to kind of always be like this, oh, or like this, but doing that and giving someone the agency of going, no, not either. and being able to go, okay, got you. We'll go back, we'll figure it out. And knowing that it's not about you being wrong and your discomfort in being wrong. It's about them for the first time being able to occupy their space and to have it be authentic and pain-free and safe and beautiful and everything they want it to be. And that was a real learning moment for me. And I'm really happy I got to have it, because I now know, move aside, gotta move aside, because this is not like, I'll make the space if I'm given the, like, trust and believe I'm given the mic, but now I need to learn when to pass the mic. And that's something I think I'm like evolving into, is knowing how best to pass the mic. To use a Salt and Pepper reference, if anyone watched the Horrible Lifetime documentary.
Do we have any other questions?
And I also realized it's kind of weird to ask someone's questions on their life, like.
But I do think it is like it's a really kind of fascinating path. And like, I do see like your kind of business and poli-sci backgrounds, like showing up, in sort of working to make sure that artists get like proper resale rights. Like that's something that, are you like, oh yeah, I went to business school for a reason? Like, yeah.
No, and that was something that I was really proud about leaving when I left, because I think you should always leave a place better than you found it. And something that I was really, really proud was being able to like leave them with I left them with a website that had e-commerce. Like they feed themselves. Like they don't need, like, grants are gravy now. Like that's, when I left, the young lady who I started the story saying, oh, she was like, no one had, she ends up being me, like the gallery director. I leave her with 3 years of a wage. They have now never, ever had a non-Indigenous, GM now there. Like it's always now been an Indigenous person. After Scott taught them, oh, I forgot to tell you, when Scott went there, he trained he didn't train all of them, but he trained a core group of men there to learn how to stretch. And now they stretch all of their canvas. They actually stretch the canvas for the outside community. And it's their own like little cottage industry of like maintaining resources within their own community. Like, I'm so happy that they have all of that. Like those are pieces that you just go here. Like, you know what I mean? Like I got to live and serve with you, but here. Like it was just really, really lovely. And it was really lovely to walk, I will say, ass backwards into exhibitions and to be able to like, I hustled in all of those shows where you see me going to Canberra and Washington and New York and, Cape Town. Literally, the way I saved money I made sure I sold every single piece so I didn't pay shipping coming back. So like, oh yeah, like I was a hustler. Like it was so weird when I came back to Canada because I was like, how do I get back into art for art's sake and not art for commodification?
Right, and like a nonprofit kind of
right,
nonprofit grant funded, like it's very different, like kind of ecosystem.
It's totally a different way of seeing it, but like I'm hoping in my capacity and in my knowledge and or just in the resources I can share with the community here, like I can somehow be a resource to kind of like, hey, how do we help artists like have self-governance in their own, you know, economic determination, and how do they have that for themselves, and how do we create good and safe work, and you know, how do we create safe and beautiful dialogue that's controversial and pushes the agenda forward and pushes, you know, it past being safe for the status quo. Like, how do we do that? How do we do it without hurting people's, well, I won't say without hurting people's feelings, because sometimes you gotta hurt people's feelings, but how do we do it in a way that still maintains dignity for both sides, right? Like, because we can do that. We can maintain discourse and be controversial. We can, right? Okay. But yeah, like I just see like so much fun stuff to do, and I'm hoping, because I come from such a like a pluralistic, like I didn't stay in one genre ever. I'm hoping that like that will just kind of bleed into partnerships and kind of infuse some really innovative and ingenious ways that we reimagine presentating art and how we feel about it and talk about it, right? Because you know, I work with dance artists and performance artists, and I also work with, you know, movie makers and YouTube content creators and vloggers. So like getting all of that into like the crazy, sexy game, like we have to make space for all these content creators who are doing crazy work out there. And I love it. Sorry.
Oh my God, no, oh my gosh, it's very exciting. And I think it's like, if you're, maybe it's like kind of a facilitatory role. That you're like, it seems like you're very open to like kind of like helping people when they need it, stepping aside when they don't.
I used to call myself an art doula when I worked at the Banff Centre. I used to say I help artists birth their pieces into the world. Like, that's what I do, an art doula. Oh, thank you, Jean. Yeah, that's how I feel. It's like I help people carry their, like they're like babies, you know, and it's just, and you meet people in such different ways and where they're carrying their child, their art baby, you know, and you've got to do different things in different ways. And sometimes it's you just holding them, sometimes it's breathing, sometimes it's pushing, sometimes it's, you know, like, oh, we've got to get into conception, you know, so, you know. But yeah, so it's all those fun things. So I think maybe that's how I work with the curator, is maybe like in an art doula-ing role and like helping the curator and the artist like art doula it up. Because for me, it's all about the supportive programming as well. Like I'm not just all about what's inside the gallery walls.
Yeah, I'm getting that sense that it's going to be a very kind of a very different Plug In ICA. And maybe one that does focus a bit more on like creation.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. With COVID right now, it's like, it could be anything. Oh, I'm sorry, I said the C word.
Does anybody else have any questions for Allison? I think you've given us all like a lot to like sort of chew on and think about, and it's been a really kind of exciting, like energizing journey, and I can't wait to like see people in real life and see Plug In real life and like get out there.
You know, I can't wait to see all these lovely people, hopefully in real life, and introduce them into the space and have fun and be happy and joyful again.
Really real faces.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Allison.
Thank you everyone
for being with us. And like, we can clap and we can.
We will.
Show your faces. Say hello.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you. Hi, Brianna.
feel like you're opening presents.
I do. I feel like the cubes are just opening. Like they're like, boom, boom. This is so lovely. Oh, thank you, Serena. Oh my God. Hello. Oh, thank you, everyone. This is,
Thank you.
Hey, you guys, I don't know. Do I close the show?
I don't know. It's so nice to see you. It's so nice to see faces.
I know.
I feel like if it was real life, I'd be like, let's go out and have a nice time.
Eugene, thank you. Bye. Okay, people are saying bye in the chat. So I think maybe we should end the call. Oh, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe.